Welcome to the Spotlight on Marketing, brought to us by Armstrong Lloyd, specialist headhunters in the B2B technology marketing space. I'm your host, Karen Lloyd, and today I'm joined by Chris Wade. He's the Chief Marketing and Product Officer at Gamma Communications. Now, Chris has quite possibly had the most interesting route to marketing I've ever come across. He started as a physicist at Oxford and became a strategic consultant. Then he discovered his true calling in product marketing. After nearly 15 years at Sage and a stint at Aptitude Software, he's now helping Gamma shape the future of their business communications and product marketing across Europe. Now, what I really love about Chris is it's not only is he the product marketing guru, in my opinion, but he believes marketing can solve business problems that companies would never even dream that marketing would touch. So welcome, Chris. I'm really looking forward to diving in.
Morning. Thank you for having me, Karen. Looking forward to it.
Great stuff. So let's start with your unique path then, from physicist to product marketing. What drew you to product marketing, and explain how you sort of shifted from one career to the other?
It's probably a little bit unfortunate to say it's an accident, isn't it? But actually it really was. So like you said, you described my path through, and actually at Sage, I did several things, including product marketing. So I ended up in product roles. And I know we're going to talk later on about the role and the interaction between product management and product marketing. My role was actually to run both sides of that and see how those things came together. So it came out of really, I think, following what physics training does for you, which is to look at data and to look at what the patterns tell you and to question how and why things work and what it is that makes those systems work. And if you think about what marketing is effectively trying to do anywhere, you're trying to influence people's behavior. You're trying to explain why the thing that you're selling to them is different or better than anybody else who's trying to sell the same or similar thing to them. And you need to look at what drives that. And so you need to be able to understand what it is that, drives success, means that things aren't working, and be relatively unemotional about that, so that you can take the plunge, try something, admit you're wrong, and then try something else. And I think it comes out of that combination of curiosity and a willingness to try things that comes from a sort of a science background.
It's interesting because I think that product marketing is often about the people, and you think that science is not about people so much in physics, particularly, as you say, it's about machines. So I think the combination of the two is really interesting. I've often had a debate where people said that people get confused between the two roles, especially when product marketing first came in. So it'd be lovely to see your definition and how you describe the difference between product marketing and product management.
I mean, crudely, I've heard this described by others as well. Product management put products on the shelves, and product marketing get them off the shelf. And I think that's it. If you're in the product management space, and particularly in B2B technology, where I've spent my time, you understand the technology, and you understand how to build the solution, and you understand the trade-offs that are made in terms of maintaining a technical platform and evolving and iterating and improving it. In my case, usually software. Whereas product marketing is all about the problem that you solve, not about the bits and bytes and how those applications and solutions are put together. So I've never been in a position where I have sort of run across confusion about who does what. What there is I think, a continuum that runs all the way from a product owner type role through a technical product manager, a commercial product manager, into product marketing. And what happens in every organization is they have their own separation of those responsibilities, or they sit in different places. It's rare, I think, that you see everything join end to end, but you can certainly see product marketing and product management sitting in similar roles. You can see product manager and product owner sitting in the same person. And it's understanding where those distinctions are. Fundamentally, again, in a sort of relatively narrow field of B2B software, you're very much using product management to understand what problem is being solved and how to solve it. And then product marketing is about explaining to the outside world why the thing that we've built is the one that they need to take out there. What problems it solve, what value will it deliver, and how will that land inside their organization to help them move their business forward.
And when did you have that aha moment? Was there a particular moment that you had where you went from the product piece into the marketing piece?
Again, totally accidentally at Aptitude. Actually, no, it's not true. At Sage, even I sort of ran from a more commercial space, so looking at it, so it's sort of business running and business operations, and then went into the marketing group to run the product marketing side of things there. And so you naturally start to understand how those pieces and those different disciplines work together to support the wider business operation. So it's probably in that space. And then you referenced at the top as well about how do you solve wider business problems. Sage, obviously quite a large organization, FTSE 100 business. Aptitude, a much smaller place where you've got much fewer resources to deploy against the problem. You have the same problems inside an organization, but you've got to be smart about how you solve them. And with the marketing team that we had there, we were looking at, for example, how do you address employee retention, employee attraction when you're competing for technical specialist roles against all the people whose names we know who much more famous than that business was. And so you understand then that marketing has a role to touch every part of the organization. And you said something earlier about physics is about machines rather than marketing is about people. I think actually everything ends up being about people. And what marketing does though is it's almost designed to, it's pretty much its function, isn't it? It's to change people's minds. And so you've got the ability to influence and change people's minds on every type of problem that's out there. And when you realize that power and you realize how applicable that can be, it does two things. One, it gives you a lot of creative latitude to then go and try and solve those problems. And the second is brings a lot of pressure, because if you're motivated that way, you understand and can get frustrated by wanting to do more and wanting to be able to drive that agenda.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And was there, it's still the leap. I'm still trying to get my head around the leap from one to the other, because you moved to marketing. What was the chrysalis? What made someone say, Chris, we need you in marketing. You're moving from this team to the other, or you put your hand up?
So I put my hand up to pick up the product marketing team in the Sage UK business. And why did I do that? We'd gone through quite a lot of organizational change there. And the product marketing function evolved out of a group of people who drove business performance and whose role it was to go and find new problems that we could solve in the market to help drive business growth. And I'd been working with them to try and put together a structure that allowed us to consolidate a set of business divisions, basically create a single consolidated plan. And it was obvious to me at that point that was going to be one of the groups inside that business, which was critically important to the future success. And so it was less about, the label of product marketing that ended up being applied over the top of it. It was more about the scope that they had to influence the success of the business. And I've often said, when people ask about the roles that I've taken and done and enjoyed, a lot of the appeal there is, I think, the combination of product management, product marketing is one of the few roles where inside a business, you're worried about today's performance, you're worried about tomorrow's performance, but you've also got an eye on where you'll be in 2 to 5 years. And that combination of time horizons and problem solving need, I think, really only exists in that space. And it was that understanding and realization that you were in the sort of cut and thrust of making sure that the business was successful today and tomorrow. But actually, you also knew that, as soon as you dealt with that, the next question was going to be, so what are we going to do next then? And you need to be out there looking at where the market is going, what problems, what regulation might be out there, what challenges might come, so that you can be shaping the future of those products at the same time. And it was that, which again, I think plays to that physics background of you want to understand and you want to be able to sort of define a path through those things and understand how to be successful.
No, that really interesting. And I think it was probably around the time when product marketing was a new thing and people didn't really know what it was. Was it around, how long ago was that?
That's a bit of a shameful question.
Sorry.
So I would have gone into that role. No, that's all right. It would have been about 2015, 2016, I think, when I stepped into that. But
yeah. So it was early. It's about 15 years ago. Yeah, I still can't my head around that product marketing feels like it's been here forever now. But it was a real step change, wasn't it? And now lots of people are hiring product marketing.
Oh,
and
yeah,
it would
absolutely.
be a surprise not to have a product marketing person. Whereas even 5 years ago, it was relatively new after COVID, which we'll touch on a bit later about why that's emerged. So at the moment, you're on your third pass of getting the product marketing to really work at Gamma. And I'd love you to talk about the challenges companies face when they're trying to embed product marketing into the business.
Yeah, we've talked about the interplay between product management and product marketing. And in my time here, we've gone through 3 iterations, as you said, or on our third. The first one, we built from product management out. And I think to your point of it's a new discipline, is it's also a different discipline. And so if you take skills that are successful in product management, you're not necessarily going to see that success from the same people in a different area, where they're moving from trying to describe a technical problem and trying to describe a solution in, say, features, functions, capability, and then translate that into something which is a little bit more broader appeal and easier to access, which I think is where I end up characterizing product marketing. I think the first pass of that was challenged because we didn't have the right skills and we didn't have the right capability. And so what that meant was, that group was almost set up to fail is too strong a phrase, but it was very difficult for them to be able to demonstrate value, because the business was like, well, we've always had what you're giving us. This isn't anything new and different, and therefore it's not accelerating us. And at the same time, they were sort of challenged by me going, this is not what we need either. This is not what product marketing needs to deliver. So we went again, and I think again you're then looking at it going, okay, you've got an opportunity to try and drive and deliver value, because the whole point of marketing in that short term sort of iteration or presentation is about supporting sales and supporting the commercial success of the business. And so you've got to demonstrate it in that phrase. And actually, I think every change cycle always has the curve you've got to go up and get people through. And again, I think that second iteration we had, we were in a different place as an organization, where again the teams didn't get the sales group necessarily on side to be able to then go through with that and explain how it's going to work. So we had to step back again and go, okay, if we're going to do this, let's put more structure in at the start. Let's be clear on what the objective and the roles and responsibilities are. And then let's make sure that we deliver that and are visibly delivering it, as opposed to just silently having stuff happen. And that's where we are now, in terms of we built a set of foundations now, which give us a much stronger place to move forward from, much more consistent and compelling description of what it is that we deliver, and also working more harmoniously with sales. The old walk a mile in someone's shoes, and it helps you understand their pain points. I think we've lived through several cycles of that now, so we're in a much better place to be able to address it. And equally, like you say, businesses are still seeking to understand the value they get from the function. So when you've got people who've been around an industry or a company or a situation for a very long time, and they're like, well, it sort of has always worked. We don't need this. It's a change that's unnecessary. You've got to over deliver to demonstrate why the change is necessary, and what got you here won't necessarily get you there. And I think, like you say, the continuing understanding of the value that product marketing can deliver somewhat is related to that. People have got to live it, to experience it, to understand what it can do, to then appreciate it and ask for more. And I think we've gone through a few cycles of that.
Yeah. So it's been a bit of an aha experience for you. So if we had to nutshell it and we were learning from it, how would we sort of break down the things that we could learn that someone could take from what you said? So I think first of all was getting buy-in and communicating stakeholder engagement. That was on the second reiteration. What other things would you say someone else could take away from what you've learned?
I would go, I am not the most structured person in the world, despite a sort of fairly data-driven physics background. But I think being able to demonstrate the path you're going to go through, what you're going to support with, how it's going to work, where are the roles and responsibilities, what are the artifacts you're going to deliver for what purpose is really important. So laying that out and understanding what that looks like. I think talking to people and understanding their problems, or getting them to articulate what the problem is, so you've got a shared understanding of that. And then you can illustrate then how product marketing, or marketing more generally, can help solve those problems. And I think most recently rather, it's build a roadmap that takes you from wherever you are to wherever you think the end point is going to be, so that people are clear where they are on that journey, and they're not necessarily anchored in the past, and they're not necessarily expecting the future now. And you've given them the ability to orientate themselves along that path as the function evolves. So I think it's probably those three things. Be clear on what the foundations are, be clear on how you're going to engage. It's four things, isn't it? Understand the problem you're trying to solve and give people the path that you're going to go on.
Great. And would you say, I mean, Out of any area of marketing, product marketing, as soon as I start talking to people, they always talk about frameworks. What frameworks do people use? What are they doing? And would you say a framework is more important in product marketing than anywhere else?
I'm not sure if it's a framework. I think there's some disciplines that you end up embedding when and it's the classic stuff, isn't it? What's the elevator pitch? What's the 1 line, 3 line, 5 line value prop? How are you articulating your personas, or how are you demonstrating problem resolution? There's sort of fairly common approaches, I think, that end up landing there that give people a structure that they know they can orientate within. And I don't really know what it is that lends to that, but if you think of something around brand, for example, there are output frameworks, brand compass or brand guidelines and things like that. But how you get there is much more fluid. There are processes that work for it, but they will vary much more, I think, depending on the situation. Whereas the fundamentals of what you're trying to describe in product marketing, I think, are always broadly similar. So you can approach it from a more structured perspective of, what problem is it we're trying to solve for who? How are we going to put this capability in their hands? How will we demonstrate to them that they are getting value out of our solution? And what is it that they will get from taking ours versus someone else's? They're pretty standard questions that you can put on a piece of paper and on a template and go, right, these are how we're going to orientate around this. This is the questions and the positions we're going to take to illustrate that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I always think of product marketing as 3 pillars that it's like always been drilled into me. So that when I'm ever interviewing or looking for somebody, talking for a job, I always think it's always about the product marketing roadmap. So can you communicate that and take that, look, is the roadmap the right thing? Are we delivering on our roadmap what the customers want? And then the second one is sales enablement. So, are the sales team communicating what we are actually doing? Are they overcoming the objections? And then the final thing is the proposition, is the value proposition aligned? Not every company has those 3 pillars, but I don't know if you feel that there's anything else I've missed on there.
No, I you just say interview. If I interview for product marketers, I always try to take them on a journey of, I expect someone who's responsible for that to have a sort of long list of ideas that they think are worth trying. The short list that takes them through some prioritization of that and some sort of quantification of benefit. The ability to describe the ones that are at the top of that list and get them out and going, get them launched. And the GTM process itself can be quite a complex challenge. And then working with the business to understand what worked, what didn't, versus what we expected to happen. And you use that then to feed that back round to the beginning of your list and go, okay, well, if that didn't work, this won't work. If that worked, this has got a greater chance. And it becomes quite an iterative process as you move through it. And obviously, again, I think I'm moderately privileged in that respect that software development lends itself to that iteration and those processes of iteration. So that that approach is not necessarily applicable in all industries, but it certainly works, I think, in my favour there.
Exactly. And do you find, when building a team, what would you say the first person in product marketing should be? How do you think the team should structure, having you've been there from several companies from the ground up?
I've always been incredibly lucky that I've gone into places that have had people who share the passion, and I think the key characteristics that I've seen work there are a sort of insatiable curiosity to understand the problem, an absolute desire to make a difference, and a real persistence to then pick it up. So then they're almost nothing to do with the marketing skills themselves. They're much more about the people, and I think that's probably because you've got to get into the minds and the understanding of so many different types of people that actually those personal skills are much more important than anything else. So I think you've got to have someone who can understand the context of the problem, is always prepared to ask the next question, is a sort of intolerant of bad answers, and so goes to pick at that and understand what's happening. And then is prepared to turn that around and go, okay, this is the compelling story. So they've got a storytelling element over the top of it.
Yeah, it's interesting actually, because do you think there's a place that people come from product marketing? So you came from product, but is there another place that you think, that generally is a good place for people to grow from?
I've seen it work coming from sales as well, because they obviously understand how to pitch things to people. It takes a certain type of salesperson, I think, to be able to do it, but I think I've seen that work. I've been really lucky. I've worked with people who sort of apprentices straight out of totally random different industries. I mean, I've worked with people who sold motorbikes for a living, raced motorbikes. We're a kickboxing champion at Sage. We had a couple of apprentices who filled that. Then we've brought people across from sales, from commercial, from technical, even technical roles sometimes. But I think to your point of what's happening now is there's a bigger talent pool of people who have done product marketing. And so it's a little bit fortunate as a leader in that space that there are more people who know what it means now. And so you can bring them in. Not always successfully, in fairness. I think sometimes, getting people who just got those interpersonal skills and attributes, getting them activated and interested is sometimes better than someone who comes in and thinks they know it all.
Yeah, and there's sometimes people, I was talking to them the other day, and she actually came from a communications background and copywriting. Obviously, with AI, she's like, is there a job in that area? And when we were talking about opportunities, I was like, do you know you're actually doing product marketing? It's a big portion of what you've said. And we were talking about, she said, I had no idea, but she was doing like 90% of product marketing. So I think some people in marketing, but there was a product marketing in the business as well. So I just wondered if there's any other pockets of marketing that you found people then naturally lend to come into. That was something.
Yeah, people coming from, like, say, content, and from even what would now I would call field marketing, so campaign positions. Some really successful people, simply because the person I'm thinking of had this infectious enthusiasm and a desire to win people over almost. And that then translated as a deep understanding of what she was trying to explain to the market. And like you say, that's pretty much product marketing. It was just she moved from a more creative expression to something which was much more structured and focused on how you're delivering business benefits, right?
Now, obviously, from your science background, I know you're very passionate about data and use of data. So I'd love you to explain about how you've shared data to drive like hyper-focused messaging you've done in the past to different personas.
Yeah, so I wish I'd done it better, to be honest. And it's always quite hard to know what's the right degree of data to use, I think, because you can, if you've got an analytical background, you can analyze everything forever if you wish. So finding the right cutoff points is always the challenge. But, I've looked at stuff in the past where you're looking at people's usage of a product, for example. So you're trying to encourage them through an upsell motion, or you're trying to understand what it is that they do with the product rather than what you think they do. And data can help then inform that underneath it. And we're looking at activity right now where we are trying to understand people's buying patterns. What is it that made them choose something in the first place, and what is it that's their behavior is now indicating for the future? And then how do we take an intervention if necessary, and at what point to try and change a possible path out of that? So I think the range of data which is available around, again, in B2B world, there's quite a lot of information typically publicly available about companies. You can use that to then drive quite detailed segmentation of things. And you can then overlay it with vertical firmographics, all those kind of different pieces to go, okay, we think this group of people are going to behave in this way. Some of it's dead obvious. GP surgeries need a certain type of solution, and so you can go and find those and market to them in a particular way, speak their language and deliver that. And sometimes you're looking at much broader bases where you're looking more behaviorally about what is making someone do something. We at the moment in Gamma, we work very extensively with an indirect channel. So trying to understand what drives channel behavior is incredibly important to us. And, data starts with good quality data. So we've done a lot of work recently on improving the quality, the referenceability, the integrity of the data set that we've got. And then, AI is a wonderful thing for overlaying over the top of any data sets, because that will then go and find you things. What we've got to do now is bring that to life and be able to articulate that to those partners and say, look, well, this is how we think we can help you and your business objectives most successfully now. And that's very much a work in progress. ICPs are always a classic one, aren't they? You use data to inform an ICP and then allow yourself to just focus on that and stop the noise. And that sometimes is much more powerful than having the clarity of what it is you're trying to do. It's having a clarity of what you're not going to do.
Do you know, I think I have never met anybody that said we've nailed the data side. There's always a hole in the data. And I think it's one of those things you always feel that you can be doing better, and you always feel that someone else is doing better than you are. I spoke to someone yesterday and they're like, we're not good enough on our data side yet. It always feels that everyone else has got it nailed.
Yeah.
And I think if someone has got a problem with data, what would you say is the best place? If you feel your data's like, your data's the thing that's letting you down, what would be a good place to start?
That's a good question. I don't think there's one good answer to that, to be honest, because I think people's data contains so much stuff which is specific to them and their situation. I just referenced ours, which is very highly oriented towards understanding our indirect channel model. Many businesses won't have that problem at all because they sell direct to the customer. I think the place to start is always the decisions you made 5 years ago, if you're honest, of understanding how you're actually going to try and collect active and live data. How are you going to put that in one place? And we're quite fortunate at Gamma at the moment with the CTO we have. It's quite progressive and forward thinking in terms of data platforms to bring into the organization. So how do you then use those as a fabric to stitch different data sources together and apply intelligence over them to then try and understand and look for the patterns that humans can't see. So yeah, that's very much a work in progress for us at the moment. But I think it's always looking for the opportunity to collect more. There's a sort of truth, I suppose. You can have too much data, but you can't collect too much data because you'll always find a place for it. You decide you don't need it, but better to have it and then not use it than to not have it and wish you did, I think.
Data hoarding.
Well, it's not quite true, is it? That data and data storage is free. It's definitely not true because cloud storage costs money, but it's much, much simpler to keep it now and to understand it within the constraints of what the law allows and the GDPR and things like that. But you can do many more things with it as well. So having a hoard of it, I think it's a treasure trove.
Yeah, exactly. I think the main thing is people often have the data, but it's just that going and looking at it and getting down in it, and that sort of barrier in our brains about the data and having someone help you access. I think that's a big problem actually for a lot of marketing teams, having the person to do it and to unpick what it means.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult to justify the ROI of a data person because you don't quite know what they're going to find. So, but better to try and advocate and have them than not.
Yeah, exactly. I was really intrigued when we spoke before that you're really passionate about marketing and the sort of ability to solve business problems with it, which is the real passion for me on this. The theme of my podcast really is shining the spotlight on business growth through marketing. And I wondered if you could share an example of how marketing solved a really unusual business challenge for you that nobody expected marketing could address.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a number of examples. I've been really fortunate to work with people who brought that with them and that sort of appreciation of a bigger picture that's out there. So an example that we identified at Aptitude, as I said, was we were struggling to recruit developers in Poland where we had them because no one knew who we were. And when you're competing with an IBM, a Google, and a Facebook, everyone knows who they are. So we went down the path of, okay, let's create an identity for the center that we have out there. Let's talk not necessarily about the customer problems that we're solving, but about how we're using technology and how we're using that to be new and interesting and where we're at the progressive and the cutting edge of adopting new techniques, new technologies, new processes, so that the graduate who's got a choice of going to be a cog in a machine or has got a chance to come and be shaping the future of something as part of a much smaller, more nimble and agile group, how do we bring that to life? And yet the ultimate solution to that was we rebranded the development center as the innovation center, gave it an identity, but also supported the HR team, the people team in there to, when they were going to a careers fair, how to present themselves, how to demonstrate who we were, how, simple things like giveaways and all those kind of things that are relatively standard techniques and tactics, but if you don't have them, they can make a big difference. So it's using what marketing is good at and then understanding the problem, as I say, and being able to put those pieces together. Yeah, more broadly and more recently, when you think about trying to create an identity for a business which operates through an indirect channel, you want it to reinforce the good things about that we are there to support that channel and that we're there to exist, well, almost exist for them. But how do you create an identity that pulls along that and crystallizes it down so that you've got something which people then recognize when you're out talking to potential new partners? because if you're hidden and unknown, you'll always be hidden and unknown. So again, you're playing on that nuance of not going too far above the line and too showy and shouty about things, but you're sympathetically using what marketing's good for, again, changing people's minds or influencing their perception of things, and bringing that to life to solve quite a different challenge over the top of it.
Do you know, I really love the example of you working with the HR team, almost like giving them battle cards, like you would the sales enablement. I think that's a really cool example of that employer branding and implying the principles of product marketing into employer branding, which is, I haven't heard anyone else talk about that before.
I think that's one of those places where you'd have felt it yourself. If you're interacting with an organization whose people don't marry up to the promise that they've made, there's an inherent sort of dissonance there. So we did a lot of work actually at Gamma with and Aptitude with the HR team and marketing together to think about brand, values, purpose, vision, and mission together. Because then you're attracting people intrinsically who have those at their core. That then reflects out into how we describe the business outside. So you're trying to improve the consistency of that fabric of the business by having people who share values, who understand and buy into a purpose, a vision, and a mission, and therefore are much more likely to be a advocate and evangelist for those when they're interacting outside the business. Whereas if the two are done separately, you can get quite a jarring disconnect, I think.
Exactly. And also people are in their silos, whereas you're almost demonstrating we are together as a company. And, you're, because sometimes people, HR in the nicest possible way, HR often are seen as the poor relative, aren't they? Oh, HR are just the people that deliver the bad news, or update, or, they're not always treated in that way. So I think it's brilliant that you've embraced it and been really positive. I've got some very close friends who are chief people officers, and they sometimes can be the ones that aren't so involved in the commerciality if the business doesn't have the right culture, and clearly it's good to work with one that does. So fantastic, thank you. That's a brilliant example. It's been an absolute pleasure. I thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed this conversation. I feel like I've learned so much. Even I consider myself a product marketing specialist, but I feel like I've learned a lot from you. So thank you, Chris. It's been great.
Lovely talking to you, Karen.
So thank you for tuning into the Spotlight of Marketing. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode with Chris. Please rate, subscribe, review the podcast, and maybe share this one with your HR team or your CEO because it could be relevant. Until next time, keep shining the spotlight and the power of marketing to drive business growth.